Hello, it's Nikki. Welcome to a brand new episode. I am so delighted that you're here. It's day 10. And as I mentioned last week, I have put together a free course where all of the 30 episodes will be, where you can just log in, you can take them and use them whenever you need them. But I just wanted to store them in one place because sometimes like downloading stuff as a podcast can be too much. So I've literally added all the MP3s and they will be in there as we go. Okay, today I wanted to really acknowledge what has been going on for you in the last few years. This is really crucial to bear in mind. And I know there has been this trend in terms of self-development of just doing the thing or just digging deep, or maybe it's your mindset that wasn't aligned, so therefore you didn't do X, Y, and Z. And yes, there are some times where I set goals for myself and I don't do them. I get part way of the way through them, but then it suddenly, falls to the wayside or whatever. And sometimes there are those moments where I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know why I said that I was going to focus on this right now, because I haven't given the time or the plan or the attention needed to actually setting myself up for success. But then there are some times where life really has to come into play. And I think there has been, especially in the place of work, where people just assume, well, just like work harder, or you're going to have to pull a few late nights, or those sorts of things to catch up. And yes, that's fine once in a while. But I know that many of my friends are in this sandwich generation where they're maybe looking after young children and maybe they're looking after parents, or they've got different responsibilities, different patterns of day that they need to consider, and their work needs to work within that. And so I really want you today to cut yourself some slack. That's all that today's episode is. I was looking at my list that I set when I was 35, so 6 years ago. And I had this big kind of 5-year plan. And some of those things I've done. Many of them I haven't. And as I was looking at that, I immediately went to that feeling of, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Why hasn't this happened? And my self-talk is appalling. I would never speak to anybody in a million years the way that I speak to myself sometimes. And I've had to learn to work that muscle, to rein it in, to really talk kindly to myself and in support of each other. And I know that over the last few years, everybody's situation has been very, very different. But when I was looking at mine, 3 things came up for me. 1, the pandemic, how long it was, how hard it was, homeschooling, lots of the things that affected people in terms of the pandemic. I wasn't on the front line, but I continued working through it and homeschooling and navigating it, and was concerned for friends and family and lots of things like that. And as a global situation, it has definitely been in our mind's eye, much more than that in many cases. The second thing is, in the last 3 years, I've had a baby. And this is, again, an interesting one because there's so much conversation around just snapping back into your genes, or once the baby sleeps through the night, then it's all fine, or whatever nonsense is written in the press. Like, oh, once you're over the first year, like it's all groovy. Having children is hardcore sometimes. It is. And there's many situations and there's many different variables on this. But being responsible and caring for other people is quite full on. And the third thing is that we moved house at the beginning of this year. As I've mentioned on the podcast, it was a long, arduous process, or so it felt. 5 months of actually actively from seeing the property to actually completing and moving in. But there had been a lot of discussions, a lot of talks before that. And it had definitely been something that had been in the process for a long, long time, especially moving to the next sort of stage of our lives. And I know that you will have your own version of factors that have had to be considered in your life. There's other things that I'm not going to talk about on this podcast, but I just wanted to give you 3 tangible ones. So you might go, oh yeah, I actually had a baby. Oh yeah, the pandemic, I can relate to that. Oh, I moved house, or I'm thinking about moving house. But maybe your thing for you is different. Maybe your relationship broke down, or maybe there were some mental health challenges. I don't want to put ideas into your head. But what I want to say is I see you. And this bro culture of just do it, just crack on, put your blinders on, forget about everything else. Many of those times where people speak in that way is because they have the privilege to do that. They're maybe not caring for anybody else. They maybe are a trust fund baby, so they don't have to consider what their overheads look like. Maybe they can be fully independent and go and do their photo shoot on a desert island because they don't have any friends. Like, that sounds awful. But I know that what we see of the self-development industry, or what we see of other people around us, we think that everybody has got it sorted. And for the most part, and I speak to a lot of people, everybody has got stuff that they're working through to a greater or a lesser degree. Everybody has had different things going on in their life to a greater or a lesser degree. And so I just want to invite you today to be compassionate as you go through this process. Yes, maybe you're thinking, oh, I thought I would have done that by now, or I'm not where I want to be. But the best thing that you can do in this situation is to be compassionate with yourself, to be gentle, and simply use the exercise as data. Like I was saying, I spent a lot of the beginning of the first part of the year negotiating back and forth and hours on the phone and trawling through paperwork. I was not in a position where I was like, okay, my business, my life, let's go. Because I was focusing on that one thing. And I think the fact that we feel this pressure to be doing all of those things all at the same time, it's just not possible. And I've had so many women, I've spoken about this all the time on the podcast, but I've had so many women get in touch with me saying, hi, Nikki, I'm 38 weeks pregnant. Like, I think maybe I need to start a side hustle or a business, or like, what shall I do? And I've always worked on the basis of like, please just go and have your baby. Welcome this baby into the world and complete that pregnancy. Because this pressure to be doing all of the things simultaneously and multitasking and having all the tabs open all at once, they're going to come tumbling down eventually. That's my experience for sure. If I try and do stuff, if I'm not being diligent about what I need to do at certain times, I know that things are going to get fuzzy and hazy, and I'm probably going to have an ugly cry. So that's it for today. If you're thinking, yeah, actually this year has not been what I want it to be, but actually I'm ready to go in January. I certainly felt like I had a bit of a different tempo because my daughter went from 2 to 3 days at the beginning of September. And I know next September she'll go to school. So our lives will change again. So if you maybe do have a bit more capacity and you want to start thinking about things, have a look at my Work With Me page. There's loads of information. There's loads of workshops and courses, and various things you can get stuck into. There's also a great freebies page where you can access lots of things to get started too. So go to nikkiraby.com and I'll see you tomorrow. Lots of love. Bye.